Welcome back to the Before You Build It mini course. In the last lesson, we talked about defining the real purpose of your project, not just what you want it to look like, but what you really are trying to accomplish. Now, once you understand the purpose, the next question is one of the most important questions you can ask before construction begins. And that question is, can this project actually work? Not just in your imagination, not just in a photo, not just because someone else did something similar, but on your property, with your budget, under your local rules, with your timeline, and with your real life situation. That is what this lesson is about, feasibility. Feasibility is one of the most overlooked parts of the entire construction planning process. A lot of owners skip it because they are excited. They want to start designing, they want to get bids, they want to talk to contractors, they want to move. And I understand that, but before you move too far, you need to know whether the project is actually feasible. Just because you want to build something does not automatically mean the property, the budget, the rules, or your life can support it in the way you imagine. Most people hear the word feasibility and they think it only means, is this allowed? That is part of it, but feasibility is bigger than that. Feasibility means you are testing whether the project can realistically work across several different areas. For this course, I want you to think about feasibility in 5 categories: legal feasibility, physical feasibility, financial feasibility, practical feasibility, and strategic feasibility. A project may work in one area and still struggle in another. For example, your city may allow ADUs, but the utility upgrades may be expensive. Or you may have enough money to do a remodel, but living in the home during the project may be extremely disruptive. Or the project may be technically possible, but it may not make sense strategically for your long-term goals. That is why feasibility matters. It helps you understand the whole picture before you commit too deeply. First category is legal feasibility. This means, can you legally build what you want to build? Depending on the project, this may involve your city, county, HOA, zoning rules, building code requirements, fire requirements, utility requirements, or other regulations. For example, if you are building an ADU, you may need to understand things like setbacks, height limits, parking, utility connections, fire access, and local design requirements. If you are doing an addition, you may need to understand lot coverage, structural requirements, zoning, and how much you are allowed to add. If you are doing a commercial project, you may need to consider accessibility, occupancy, fire life safety, parking, and business use requirements. The main point is this: do not assume your project is allowed just because it seems reasonable. And do not assume your property can do what another property did. Even properties on the same street can have different conditions, limitations, or requirements. Before you get too far emotionally or financially, you want to confirm what the rules actually allow. The second category is physical feasibility. This is about the property itself. Can the property physically support what you want to do? This is where things like site conditions, structure, utilities, access, slope, drainage, and existing systems matter. For example, is there enough room to build? Can workers and materials access the site? Is the existing structure strong enough to support the remodel or addition? Will walls need to be removed? Are they load-bearing? Is the electrical panel large enough? Can the plumbing support the new layout? Is the sewer connection adequate? Is there slope or drainage that may create additional costs? Are there retaining walls, trees, easements, or neighboring property issues? These things can affect costs dramatically, and many of them are not obvious from the beginning. This is why physical feasibility needs to be reviewed early, because a project that looks simple in concept can become much more complicated once the property conditions are understood. The third category is financial feasibility, and this is where owners need to be very honest. Financial feasibility means, can the project realistically work within your financial situation and your goals? Not just the construction price alone, the total project investment, That may include design fees, engineering, permits, utility upgrades, soft costs, contingency, temporary housing, financing costs, owner purchased items, and construction. A lot of owners only think about the contractor's price, but the contractor's price may not be the total cost. So financial feasibility asks, do I understand the real cost range? Can I afford the project if costs increase? Do I have contingency? If this is an investment, does the return make sense? If this is for rental income, do the numbers still work after expenses? If this is for resale, am I overbuilding? If this is for a lifestyle, am I comfortable with the amount of money being invested? This is not about killing the dream. It's about making sure the dream is financially grounded. Because one of the most stressful things an owner can experience is realizing too late that the project costs more than they are comfortable carrying. The fourth category is practical feasibility. This is the category that many owners forget. Practical feasibility asks, can your life, family, tenants, business, or schedule actually handle the project? Construction does not happen in a vacuum. If you are remodeling your home, will you live there during the work? Will you have a working kitchen, access to bathrooms? Will children or pets be safe? Will you need temporary housing? If you have tenants, how will they be affected? If this is a commercial project, how will construction affect customers, employees, and business operations? If this is an ADU, how will construction affect parking, privacy, access, and neighbors? These questions matter because construction is disruptive. And if you do not plan for the disruption, the emotional cost of the project can become much higher than expected. A project can be legally allowed and financially possible, but practically very difficult. That does not mean you should not do it. It means you need a real plan for how to live through it. The fifth category is strategic feasibility. This asks, does this project actually support your larger goal? This is where wisdom comes in, because not every project that is possible is the right project. Maybe you can build a very large addition, but it may over improve the property for the neighborhood. Maybe you can spend heavily on luxury finishes, but if the property is a rental, that may not be the smartest investment. Maybe you can convert a garage, but a detached ADU may create a better long-term outcome. Maybe you can remodel the entire home all at once, but phasing the project may protect your budget and reduce disruption. Strategic feasibility helps you step back and ask, is this the right project? Is this the right vision of the project? Is this the right timing? Is this the right level of investment? Does this decision serve the long-term goal? This is important because construction can easily become emotional, and strategic feasibility keeps the project connected to the bigger picture. One of the biggest reasons feasibility matters is because it helps you avoid expensive momentum. Expensive momentum happens when you start spending money and making decisions before confirming whether the project really works. You hire people, you start design, you get emotionally attached, you tell your family, you start imagining the finished results. You may even start making financial plans around it. Then later, you discover a major issue. The project costs more than expected. The city requires something you didn't know about. The property needs major upgrades. The layout just doesn't seem to work. The timeline is longer than expected. The return is weaker than expected. Now it becomes emotionally harder to pause or adjust because you are already fully invested. That is why feasibility should happen early. Early clarity is much cheaper than late correction. Now I want to make something very clear. Feasibility does not mean you need every single answer before moving forward. That is just not realistic. At the beginning, some things will still be unknown. But feasibility helps you identify the biggest questions early. You may not know the exact utility cost yet, but you should know whether utilities could be a risk. You may not know the exact permit timeline, but you should know whether permits will affect the schedule. You may not know the final construction cost, but you should know whether your budget is in the right range. You may not know every structural detail, but you should know whether the structural changes require professional evaluation. Feasibility is not about perfect certainty. It is about reducing blind spots, and that alone can protect the project. When owners skip feasibility, the project may start moving in the wrong direction. They may design something they cannot afford. They may pursue something the city will not approve, or underestimate site conditions. They may choose a contractor before understanding the real project requirements, or ignore practical disruption. They may build something that does not support the long-term goal, and once that happens, the project becomes harder to correct. That is why feasibility should not be treated like a minor step. It is one of the most important filters before construction begins. The main takeaway from this lesson is this: before you commit too much money, time, or emotion to a construction project, test feasibility. Ask whether the project works legally, physically, financially, practically, and strategically. If the answer is yes, you can move forward with more confidence. If the answer is unclear, that does not mean the project is bad. It means you need more information. And if the answer is no, you may need to adjust the project before moving forward. That is not failure, that is wisdom. Before moving on to the next lesson, I want you to score your project in each feasibility category from 1 to 5. A score of 1 means very unclear. A score of 5 means very clear. Score your project in these 5 areas: legal feasibility, physical feasibility, financial feasibility, practical feasibility, strategic feasibility. Then look at your lowest score. That lowest score is probably where your project needs more attention before you move forward. In the next lesson, we're going to talk about the budget, and specifically why hope is not a construction budget. Many owners think that they have a budget when really they only have a number, and those are not the same thing. I'll see you in lesson 4.